For 20 years, Master Tigress stood outside the Jade Palace and punched ironwood trees. She struck the dense, unyielding wood day after day, conditioning her limbs until the nerve endings died and she felt absolutely nothing. Then, on the exact day the dragon warrior is to be chosen, a clumsy, out-of-shape panda named Po literally falls out of the sky and lands in the middle of the tournament arena. On one side, you have 2 decades of agonizing physical sacrifice and lethal discipline. On the other, you have a noodle maker with 0 minutes of combat training. Yet Master Oogway bypassed the undeniable master of the tiger style, pointed a withered finger at the panda, and handed him the ultimate martial arts title. Was this a cosmic accident? A joke by an old turtle? Or did Oogway look past perfection and spot a fatal flaw hiding right in plain sight? In the highest tiers of martial arts, dedicating your entire life, body, and identity to a single goal might actually disqualify you from ever achieving it. Before she was the leader of the Furious Five, Tigress was an orphan at the Baogu orphanage. She lacked control over her own immense strength, leading the caretakers and other children to fear her as a dangerous monster. Master Shifu eventually stepped in and adopted her, but he brought severe psychological baggage to the relationship. He was a broken man, betrayed years earlier when his first adopted son and star pupil, Tai Lung, turned to darkness and ravaged the valley. Terrified of repeating his mistake, Shifu made a severe pedagogical error. He trained Tigress with ruthless efficiency, but withheld the parental love she desperately craved. This forged a heavy psychological burden. Tigress didn't master kung fu to protect the innocent. She endured the brutal training as a calculated vehicle to finally win her adoptive father's love. This diagram shows the psychological feedback loop that trapped her. Her intense desire for validation fed directly into rigid physical control, locking her into a highly unstable ego state. She used martial discipline to mask deep, unresolved insecurity. She mirrored Tai Lung in almost every psychological metric. Both tied their self-worth to a golden scroll and a master's approval. That desperate need for validation made her a ticking time bomb of ambition. Because her skill served a fragile ego rather than a peaceful heart, her mastery was built on the same volatile foundation that led to Tai Lung's downfall. Now, a popular theory argues that Po's selection had nothing to do with spirituality, framing it instead as a strictly biological countermeasure. The logic assumes that because Tai Lung's signature nerve strikes instantly paralyzed standard warriors, Po's unique physiology, specifically a thick layer of body fat, absorbed those strikes, making him naturally immune. But treating the Dragon Warrior selection as a physical matchup ignores how this universe actually operates. This animation compares the mechanics of their combat styles. On the left, Tigress employs a hard style, utilizing rigid, linear strikes that shatter against heavy resistance. On the right, Po relies on a soft style, using fluid, circular motions to redirect and absorb incoming force. True success as the Dragon Warrior requires the wielder to be a conduit for Qi, the energy of the universe. This demands a spirit capable of total alignment, a feat that is impossible for someone clinging to the rigid techniques of physical defense. Po was chosen because his spirit flowed naturally with reality. Tigress's obsession with control made her far too rigid to safely hold limitless power. This brings us to Master Oogway's guiding ideology, Wu Wei, an ancient Taoist concept translating roughly to effortless action. Wu Wei is the practice of submitting to the natural order of the universe, moving with the current of life, instead of trying to force destiny through sheer willpower and suffering. Tigress acted as the literal antithesis of Wu Wei. Like this illustration of an overflowing teacup, her mind was already brimming with childhood trauma, external expectations, and the suffocating pressure to be perfect. She had no room left to learn anything new. Po represented the empty vessel. Without the baggage of martial expectations or the trauma of a lifetime spent seeking approval, his spirit was naturally attuned to the flow of the universe. Being denied the Dragon Scroll forced Tigress to confront a harsh truth. Her self-worth never depended on a vague prophecy. and it certainly didn't depend on Shifu's approval. By removing the weight of the title, Oogway cleared the path for her true growth. Denied the shortcut of a legendary destiny, Tigress began the much harder work of finding internal validation outside of her master's shadow. So, does true mastery come from fighting for absolute control over your destiny, or from learning how to finally let it go?